Okay, we're looking at the number system still. We are looking at handout 3. How can rational numbers be added? Remember that rational numbers are fractions or decimals. So we're going to jot down the process for adding fractions and decimals. So fractions, remember that we have to have common denominators. So you're going to find the LCM, add the numerator, and keep the denominator the same. Decimals. Line up your decimal points. And insert any placeholders. So if you need to add some zeros to hold a place value, then do that. The same steps apply to adding various types of rational numbers. So looking at adding integers, if the signs are the same, add and use the same sign. So let's look at 7 plus 6. 7 plus 6 is 13. Both of those are positive. The answer is a positive 13. Negative 8 plus negative 11. So the signs are the same. They're both negative. So we're just going to add the numbers. 8 plus 11 makes 19. And since the sign was negative on both, it is a negative 19. Negative 3 plus negative 6. The signs are both negative. So 6 plus 3 makes 9. And the answer is negative 9 because that's the sign we're using. Negative 5 plus negative 14. Same signs. They're both negative. So the answer is negative 19. 3 plus 12, both signs are positive, so we're going to add those. 3 plus 12 is 15. Answer is positive 15. If the signs are different, however, you're going to subtract. So subtracting the numbers. Then you take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. Remember, absolute value is the distance to 0 on a number line. So negative 2 plus 10. We have one that is negative and one that is positive. So the signs are different from each other. So we're actually going to subtract these numbers. So 10 minus 2, and that's going to be 8. And then we look and we see, well, which one has a greater absolute value? So negative 2 is only 2 spaces from 0. 10 is 10 spaces from 0. So this one has the greater absolute value, and the sign for that is positive. So our answer is positive 8. 8 plus a negative 17. Our signs are different, so we're actually going to subtract these values. 17 minus 8 is 9. We look at both of these and we see which one has a greater absolute value. 8 is 8 spaces from 0. Negative 17 is 17 spaces from 0, so this has a greater absolute value. Its sign is negative, so our answer is negative also. So the answer is negative 9. 9 plus a negative 7. The signs are different, so we subtract the values. We get a 2. We look at the absolute values. So 9 has a greater absolute value. 9 was positive, so our answer is positive 2.
It's 3 o'clock, everyone. Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank y'all for all your hard work.
Okay. Negative 11 plus 3. The signs are different, so we're going to subtract these. So that would be 8. We look at the absolute value of negative 11 versus the absolute value of 3. This has a greater absolute value, and it is negative, so our answer is negative 8. Negative 15 plus 9, signs are different, so subtract, find the difference. So I like to say, signs are different, find the difference, and finding the difference means subtraction. 15 minus 9 is 6. Compare the absolute values. Negative 15 has a greater absolute value, so our answer is also negative because it takes the sign of the number with the greater absolute value, so the answer here is negative 6. So, adding decimals. If the signs are the same, add and use the same sign. 4.5 plus 6.3, signs are the same. They're both positive, so we would just line these up. Start on the right-hand side. Bring down your decimal. Okay. The next problem, negative 1 8/10 plus negative 1 6/10. The signs are the same. They're both negative, so we're just going to add those values together. If you're doing it by hand, line them up like this. Keep that negative sign. If both of them are negative, the answer is also negative. Negative 3.7 plus negative 6.5. Again, you would line them up. Add them because the signs are the same. Keep the sign, which is a negative sign. Negative 10 2/10. Negative 15 6/10 plus a negative 14. Add those up. Keep the sign, that's 29 6/10, negative 29 6/10. The last one, they're both positive, line them up. (16 1/10) is your answer there. If the signs are different, subtract and take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So here we've got a negative and we have a positive. And so we want to actually put the larger absolute value on top minus the smaller absolute value on the bottom, making sure that we line up our decimal points. This is 8 2/10. This one has a greater absolute value, so it is a positive 8 2/10. Final answer. The next one, we have a positive 8.2 plus a negative 17.6. I'm going to switch my pens a little bit here. Okay. So signs are different. Find the difference. Subtract those numbers. So 17 6/10 minus 8 2/10. So we line those up. We get 9 4/10. However, this time, this has the greater absolute value, so our answer is negative 9 4/10. 9 plus a negative 7 4/10. So signs are different. Find the difference. Put the greater absolute value on top minus the smaller absolute value. Complete your subtraction, which we can't take 4 from nothing, so we must borrow from the ones column. So we've got 1 6/10. Let's look at our absolute values. 9 has a greater absolute value. 9 is positive, so our answer is positive 1 6/10. You don't have to write the positive sign, but it's a good habit and it's not one that's a bad thing. You can always be sure you included your sign if you put a positive there. Negative 11 8/10 plus 3 3/10. Signs are different. Find the difference. So put the greater absolute value on top minus the smaller absolute value on the bottom, and then complete your subtraction. Look at your signs to see which one has the greater absolute value. This one does, and this one is negative, so our answer is negative 8 5/10. Okay, the next one, negative 15 7/10 plus a positive 9 2/10. Signs are different. Find the difference. Put the greater absolute value on top. Line up your decimals and find their difference. Now look at your absolute values. This one has a greater absolute value and it is negative. So our answer here is negative 6 5/10. Okay. So the process for fractions is the same. It's just going to require more steps. If the signs are the same, add and use the same sign. So in addition and subtraction, we have to make sure that the denominators are the same. So in this particular box, all of these have the same denominators, so we're not having to find any common denominators. And so we need to add the numerators. So in this one, this would be 7/5. This would be 10/6. and it's negative because both of these are negative. This one, you've got a 3/4 and a 1 3/4. So that makes a 1 6/4. But since this is improper, this becomes a 2 2/4, which then simplifies to 2 1/2, and it's also a negative 2 1/2 because both of our pieces are negatives. So let me change colors here. Negative 3/10 plus a negative 9/10, so 9 and 3 make 12. You can simplify this. You can make it mixed if you want to. 10 goes into 12 one time with 2/10 left. That simplifies to 1/5, and they're both negative, so our answer also needs to be negative. And then our last one here. We're going to add our tops, but we also have to add our whole pieces. So we got our 3 and our 1. We also have our 2 and our 1, the wholes. So 2 plus 1 makes 3. 3 and 1 make 4. 8's your denominator, and it stays. Everything is positive, so we're good there. We can simplify. Both of those are divisible by 4. So our final answer is 3 1/2. If the signs are different, then we're going to subtract and take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So just like before, except this time we're dealing with fractions. So it makes it a little more complex. Okay, these are different, so we gotta find the difference. So we got 1 1/3 minus 2/3. Okay, I can't take 2 from 1. My denominator is 3. That means a whole number is equal to 3/3. So if I'm going to regroup, I'm going to borrow from this whole number, and I'm going to take 3/3 and add it to this 1/3. So now this becomes 4/3 minus 2/3, which is going to be 2/3. Now I'm going to look at the absolute values of my original pieces. So I've got 1 1/3 and 2/3. So this one has a greater absolute value. This one is positive, so my answer is positive 2/3. Okay. So we got 7/8 plus a negative 5/8. Signs are different. Find the difference. So 7/8 minus 5/8 equals 2/8. We can simplify that by dividing by 2. 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. This has a greater absolute value because the numerator is greater, and it is positive. So our answer here is positive. Okay, so let's look at the next one. We get 5/12 plus a negative 7/12. We want to put the greater absolute value first. Our signs are different. One's positive, one's negative, so we got to find the difference. So 7/12 minus 5/12, and that's going to be 2/12. We can divide both of those by 2, which would be 1/6. Then we look at the absolute value. This one has a greater absolute value, and it is negative, so our answer is negative 1/6. Next one. We have negative 8/9 plus a positive 4/9. The signs are different. One is negative, one is positive, so we need to find the difference. 8/9 has a greater absolute value, so it comes first, minus the 4/9. 8 minus 4 is 4. Now let's look at our absolute value. This has a greater absolute value. It is negative, so our answer is also negative. And that one can't be simplified, so it's good the way it is. Looking at the next one, we have negative 7/10 plus a positive 1 3/10. Our signs are different, so we find the difference. The greater absolute value is 1 3/10, so it comes first. Then we'll subtract the 7/10. can't take 7 from 3, so again, I'm going to have to regroup here. So since the denominator is 10, that means a whole number is 10 out of 10, so you've got 10 pieces. So I'm going to take that 10 pieces and add it to that 3 that I already have and get rid of this. So I took the whole number away, it became 0. I'm going to add my 10 pieces to my 3 pieces I've already got, so that makes 13 over 10 minus 7 over 10. 13 minus 7 would be 6. No, 8. No, 6, I'm correct. So 6/10. Let's subtract correctly there. And we can simplify that, divide it by 2, and we get 3/5. Let's look at our absolute value to see what sign we need. This one has a greater absolute value and it's positive, so our answer needs to be positive. So positive 3/5. Positive 3/5 is our answer. Now let's get to the harder part. And the harder part is unlike denominators. So find a common denominator, then follow the steps for adding fractions with like denominators. So first we get like denominators, then we go back to the steps that we've already been looking at. So on this one, I can't reduce 6 to make it become, well, I can reduce 6 to make it become 3, but I can't simplify the 1 by dividing it by 2. And so what I've got to do is multiply this side by 2. 3 times 2 will give me 6. So I keep this. 2 times 2 makes 4, and 3 times 2 makes 6. Now let me follow the rules for fractions with like denominators. So our signs are different, so we find the difference. So we want to put the greater absolute value first and subtract the smaller absolute value. Our denominators are the same, so we can subtract the numerators. 4 minus 1 is 3. So 3/6 simplifies to 1/2, because both of these are divisible by 3. Now let's look at our absolute value to see what kind of sign we're going to get. This one has a greater absolute value because the numerator is larger, and that one is positive, so our answer here is positive 1/2. Okay, 5/8 and 3/4. We would need to multiply this side by 2 so that we can change it into 8ths. So we keep the 5/8. 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8. Signs are different, find the difference. So we put the one with the greater absolute value first and subtract or find the difference. 6 minus 5 is 1/8. Now, looking up here, this one has the greater absolute value, so it's negative, so our answer needs to be negative 1/8. 3/12 and negative 1 2/3. So we're going to take this one. This one has a little more steps because we've got a mixed number here. So we have 3/12 plus 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 plus 2 makes 5. So negative 5/3. Now we need like denominators. So we're going to multiply this side by 4. Our signs are different, so we're going to find the difference. We're going to take the larger absolute value, subtract the smaller absolute value, and 20 minus 3 would be 17. 17/12 is improper. 12 goes into 17 one time. Minus 12 would be 5, so there'd be 5 pieces left. Now let's look at our absolute value to see what kind of sign we need. This has a greater absolute value because the denominators are the same and the numerator is bigger. So this sign is negative, so our answer needs to be negative. Negative 1 5/12. Okay, one more to go. Negative 1/2 plus 4/5. First of all, our denominators are not the same. This time, I can't make a 2 become a 5, and I can't make a 5 become a 2, so the next thing would be 10. So this side gets multiplied by 5, while this side gets multiplied by 2. So 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, and it had a negative sign, and don't forget it. 4 times 2 is 8, 5 times 2 is 10, and that one is positive. Signs are different, find the difference. So 8/10 has a greater absolute value, minus 5/10. 8 minus 5 is 3, so it's 3/10. Now to determine our sign, we look at the greater absolute value, which would be 8/10, because the 8 is larger than the 5, and the denominators are already the same at that point. So our answer is a positive 3/10.